Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, From Farm to Fork, how to ensure safe and quality produce delivery with real-time temperature tracking. We're excited you could join us. My name is Laura Beth Ezel, and I'll be moderating today's event. Now, in today's presentation, we are going to take a deep dive into the movement of perishable goods, specifically fresh fruits and vegetables from farm to fork. Now, our speakers will highlight why this process is so complex and discuss how temperature tracking is helping farmers, shippers, and retailers maintain a fresher and safer food supply chain. Now, before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button. That's located in the top right corner of your presentation window. Now, if you need technical assistance, click on the Help widget that's located on the bottom left corner of your console. Now, we encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget at the bottom of your console. Now, we will try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we just run out of time, it will be answered later via email. So please know that we do capture all your questions. Well, we are thrilled to be joined by our speakers today, Sergio Torres, Logistics Manager at Braga Fresh, and Raja Nagaraja, Team Lead Food Vertical Tive. So to kick off, I would like to ask each of our speakers to provide a quick introduction of themselves and their work. Sergio?
Hi, everybody. My name is Sergio Torres. I've worked in the produce business for almost a little over 15 years. Currently, I'm the logistics manager here at Braga Fresh, and I'm helping build the new delivered program that we have here going on, manage produce delivery to our customers. I'm responsible for our daily vendor management for both brokers and asset-based carriers throughout the continental U.S. And I work with our sales team, our product planning team, our distribution centers, third-party facilities, and our customers to ensure that our customers get the freshest product available.
Raja?
Awesome. Well, I don't do as much as Sergio, but hello, everyone. My name is Raja Nagaraja. I'm the team lead of the food vertical over here at Tive Inc. Over here, I'm pretty fortunate enough to work with some of the most notable food shippers in the world, as well as retailers. Been with Tive for about 2.5 years. And in this new role, I focus specifically working with fresh produce and meat companies, shipping all sorts of perishable items into retail, wholesale, and export locations. My passion is agriculture and technology, and so being at Tive, I'm pretty fortunate to sit right at that intersection, helping companies like Braga Fresh implement real-time technology solutions to ultimately ensure the freshest delivery possible at end destination. At Tive, we strive to deliver the highest quality products, to consistently innovate, and to provide top-notch customer service through and through.
Excellent. Well, I want to get right into it because I am curious about your answer today to the questions for you guys. And so, Sergio and Raja, our first question today is, why is shipping fresh produce so complex? Sergio, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so produce in itself, it's very temperature sensitive. So it's not like we're shipping pens and pencils. So really temperature dictates the shelf life of our product. So for example, if we're shipping something and the reefer is a little too warm it's too warm during transit, that's going to reduce the shelf life once it reaches our final customer. Vice versa, if it's too cold, we'll have the same effect. And in either case, if that happens, we might have a load that's rejected. So at the end of the day, our customers aren't able to enjoy our product. And really, we need to be in that sweet spot that we like to see is 34 to 35 degrees. So it's having that during transit and having that same temperature when the product arrives. And, this is what gives us the maximum shelf life once it delivers. Some of these loads are going cross country. So you're looking at a 4 to 5 day transit time. And, if it's a couple of degrees, that might not sound like it's a lot, but, during that long of a transit time, really that does affect the final shelf life once it arrives. And ideally you want to see, have once that product hits the stores, still be able to give you another, 10-day shelf life once it arrives. So when our customers take it home, they would enjoy it and it doesn't, go bad on them on the first day that they take it home.
Yeah, and just going off of that, I mean, I think it's important to note here, like Sergio said, we're not talking about is there any non-perishable hard commodity. That's out of the scope of what we're talking about here today. There's a certain shelf life with all of these perishable commodities like leafy greens, like berries, whatever you might be talking about or shipping, in which both the retailer and the shipper both want to maximize that shelf life and ensure the highest level of freshness. So, in order to meet that, there needs to be at least or the little amount of temperature abuse between origin and destination. And that's the equation we're always benchmarking against. To do this, shipper needs to be monitoring their transportation providers, seeing where temperature abuse is happening, sort of delays, stops, any sort of excursions throughout that supply chain in which the cold chain custody might be broken. On the retailer side of things, they want to look across their different commodities and sourcing regions to understand where issues are happening and be able to go to their suppliers and benchmark in order to drive and change behaviors. Where Tive comes in and other real-time tracking solutions, using this sort of data is very important to understand the trends. The historical way of doing this is either just guessing, not having anything in the truck, or using some sort of passive solution in which you can't mitigate that issue in real time. We're trying to change that behavior to enable all stakeholders throughout the supply chain to take action and prevent issues from happening, or at least be made aware of them before they hit a destination.
Yeah, thank you for sharing and helping the stage, both of you there. And so with that in mind, Sergio, can you provide a few examples of the most common things to go wrong in transport?
Yeah, some of the typical things that we normally see when there are some temperature issues is the driver setting the temperature at the wrong set point, or also just a mechanical / reefer issue during transit. So, if we're looking for them to set that reefer at 33 or 34 degrees and they're setting them at 36, 37 degrees, those 2 extra degrees might not sound like a lot, but as I mentioned before, when you're traveling 4 or 5 days across country, those couple of degrees do make a difference at the end of the day. Another example is if there's a trailer breakdown or reefer issue. At that point, when you have these live temperature recorders and you get an alert, that's great because then you're able to act at that moment and find a solution to make sure you're able to save that load.
Yeah, great points there. Thank you for that. And are there certain produce that are more affected by these types of excursions, Sergio?
So though all produce, like I mentioned, is sensitive, some are even a little bit more sensitive than others. Give an example, if we look at on our end on spinach, a couple of degrees on the lower end, we'll freeze that load. And on the flip side, if you have harder produce that's stronger, like a celery, that will be able to sustain, that colder temperature. And, when you have mixed loads as well, it just becomes that much complicated. You just need to have temperature really be at that temperature that you like, since you have mixed different products in there, that really makes sure that everything gets there at the right temperature.
Yeah, going off of that, while we'd love for everyone in the world to be able to use our solution, not everyone is a fit. Today, long-term speaking, there will be those later stage adopters. But when we talk about an ideal candidate for real-time temperature and location tracking, it's definitely more of those markets that Sergio was alluding to, as opposed to others. So for us, we think about leafy greens, berries, avocados, cucumbers, tomatoes, and even going beyond produce, all types of meat and poultry, beef, pork, chicken, even seafood as well. These are really the early adopters of this sort of technology, but just because these commodities are so much more sensitive and prone to damage. Whereas if you're shipping something like an apple or a pear or a melon, something that is less likely to take on abuse during transport, having those real-time data is nice in those situations, but less so a must-have. The apple, the pear, the melon can take that abuse, withstand temperature fluctuations while in transit going across country, whereas those other ones, like Sergio said, that 1 or 2 degree difference for 30 or 45 minutes in the middle of the U.S., that can cause that product to be spoiled or a reduction in shelf life.
Yeah, great points there, and just really interesting. So keeping that in mind, what role does temperature tracking play in identifying these excursions and then saving the load when things do go wrong? Sergio?
So kind of on our side, as a shipper, you always have a checklist. So you make sure that everything is done correctly on our end to make sure none of these things go wrong. But you do have instances where a driver might want to raise a temperature for X reason that he thinks it's maybe too cold or too warm, and in that case, when you have a tracker that's giving you live temps, you see a rise of 2 to 3 degrees, you're able to act at that point and give them a call. So it's really when we see things like this where temperatures are rising or lowering, we've asked carriers to take pictures of the reefer setting just to reconfirm that the correct temperature is set to what we've asked them to do. In other cases, when you see a major spike, 4 or 5 degrees, and within a couple hours, then really, that's something you need to jump on right away. Give them a call, make sure the carrier stops at their next assigned stop or the next safest stop. He pulls over and then just checks that the reefer and everything is correct. And sometimes that's when you find out that there's something wrong, and then you start working on a solution to get that fixed.
Yeah, I think, every logistics manager, transportation director, supply chain, whoever's the person in charge of overseeing outbound trucks, the goal is to drive the highest on time in full, as we like to say here, OTIF score as possible. Making sure that these trucks are hitting appointment times as well as staying at proper cold chain temps the entirety of the transit. But, when it comes to shipping this fresh produce and using these sort of technologies out there to mitigate issues, there's a large part of the perishable market still relying on passive solutions. Some sort of solution that's just going to log temperature records from A to B and someone being able to download it at that B destination. And so, while these passive solutions certainly check off a box as far as being compliant with FSMA or for the FDA, as well as a retailer or other customers, requirements, it's extremely difficult or near impossible to use that solution to mitigate and prevent issues, which is what real-time solutions are doing. Here at Tive, we're focused on providing actionable insights to drive this informed decision-making throughout the supply chain. So, using this real-time data allows shippers and every stakeholder throughout the supply chain to interact with an issue as it's happening or before it's happening, before it hits that B destination, where, historically a load is just getting rejected, and maybe going into a landfill or taking on a claim, which is extremely expensive and time consuming for both parties. It takes so much time and effort to get product onto a truck and costs a lot today to get it across the country. And so using this real-time data allows a shipper as well as a receiver to have a insurance tool in there to make sure that it gets to the store, gets to the shelf, and has that maximum shelf life.
Yeah, great points there. And thanks for that, breaking it down, that explanation there. So, Raja, can you explain the difference real-time temperature trackers can make in complying with regulatory guidelines?
Sure. Well, I'm sure everyone on this panel here tuning in is, aware of FSMA and the Food Safety Modernization Act. That's one of the biggest reasons this stuff is so commonplace at this point. If you're a shipper shipping a perishable item without some sort of ability to log the temperatures, you're breaking the law at that point. And so you need to have something in there at a bare minimum. Second to that, as Sergio can attest to, a lot of customers, your major retailers across the U.S., Canada, North America, generally speaking, as well as abroad, have requirements to be able to ship into them. If it's hitting a Whole Foods, a Walmart, whoever it may be, those QA and receivers want to know that this product, whatever's arriving at their door, has stayed in the proper cold chain the entire time and that it hasn't been broken, because they don't want to run the risk of putting a bad product onto their shelves, which will reach a consumer and cause issues downstream. No one wants that. So, with FSMA and the new rules and legislation that have come out over the last couple of years, a shipper as well as a receiver needs to be able to provide temperature records very quickly. We're talking 24 hours if the FDA is to request it. This past fall, there was a new FSMA rule that did go into effect, which puts even further mandates to the shippers to make sure that this protocol is in adherence and making sure that this data is super accessible to everyone very quickly. As I mentioned, to the consumer side of things, this is where the biggest importance probably is. Consumers are stressing everything about a transparent supply chain and wanting to know where things came from, how they got there, et cetera. And so, you'll see that, when you have a big shipper on their website, you can go and track where that carton maybe came from. Temperature records and using the real-time data are also going to bolster those transparency efforts, because consumers do want that. They want to know where things have come from, how they've traveled, and ultimately what they're eating on their plate. It's no longer really a nice to have. It's becoming a must have these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that one 100%. So shifting gears a little bit, can you explain the different models for shipping and receiving perishable goods, Sergio?
Yeah, really, there's two major ones that you see, which is the delivered model and then the FOB model. The difference between those is on the delivered model, it's when kind of the shipper, they're handling the transportation. So a lot of buyers like this model just because, they're sending the order over with the delivery date, and then kind of we take care of the rest. The FOB model is more where they put in the order, and then they're also managing and arranging the transportation. And a subdivision of these two would be a LTL, which means a less than truckload, which can mean that they're ordering just a few pallets, and that goes both ways, where they could be delivered or FOB. But sometimes on these LTL trucks, you have a mixed variety of products, different customers. So on some of these, really, I think these recorders really help, just because it's not just your product that's on there. You want to make sure it doesn't get left at a different stop, and then that the temperature is definitely the right temp that you need it to be. But regardless of the delivery mode, really, tracking temperatures is important in all our shipments.
Yeah, and if you refer back to my earlier point about how this is sort of rolled out and who cares about what throughout the supply chain, when you look at someone like Braga Fresh, Sergio's there to grow that delivered program because it's beneficial to their business and their customers, and so they are the huge adopters of this technology from the shipper side of things. Rolling Tive out across majority of their shipments and other temperature tracking solutions to ensure that they have the visibility, because it's their job to get there. If you're more of an FOB shipper where the retailer or wholesaler or whatever customer that may be is arranging the transportation and sending that to your docks, they're probably the one that cares more about it, because they want that to get there. They're in charge of making sure that it hits the destination at the highest level of freshness possible. And so, it's important from our end to think about, who we're targeting and who's going to want to adopt this technology, because there's different levels of care on both sides. If you're just an FOB produce shipper, you're less likely to care about adding a real-time tracker into your shipment, because you're not in charge of that transportation. Whereas if you're someone like a delivered shipper such as Braga, not only do you need to make sure that the temperature is intact, but these customers are also probably asking you, hey, when are these trucks arriving? I need to know when it's going to hit this DC and this DC, because we're running low, we're running a promo, and we need to have this merchandise. So when is this truck going to get there? And so there's also that customer service element as well, of being able to not only tell your customer that this truck is going to arrive in the proper cold chain, but hey, it's also going to arrive on time.
Yeah, great points there. And I think we've made the point, temperature tracking is so important. So how can it be done with each delivery model, Sergio?
Well, while many producers, shippers are still using some of the passive temperature recorders, which they don't find out what's happening until the load is delivered. Kind of our preference is these live trackers, because also just one of the major things is the convenience. We're going to hop on a website, put in the serial number, and then we know where the truck currently is, and that it's riding at the actual temperature that it should be, and that we're tracking for on-time delivery. Our goal here is to hit 100% delivery all the time. that's a high goal that, we always have a mishap here and there, but, that's the goal. And being able to track these trucks and live in a live setting really helps us get to that goal. A lot of the receivers really are looking for a 98% on time delivery. So being able to track all this really gets us in line with all of these goals that we set for ourselves and that our customers are expecting from us. Uh, Real-time trackers really allow us to choose our best carrier partners. We're lucky here that we have a tight net of carriers that we use that we've actually been using for years. So if we start seeing any issues on the delivery side, the data that we get from these trackers, we're able to dig into it and find out what's going on. Is this a carrier issue? Is this a receiver issue? Could this be an us issue? And with the data that we're getting, we're able to dig into that and figure out if there is an issue. How are we going to get that resolved? For an example, we had a customer in the Midwest where we were seeing some warm temps, and then we started digging into why that was going on. We figured out from getting the data from all their loads that the loads that we're seeing, kind of the higher temp side, were the ones that were more on the full side, meaning we were seeing over 28 pallets on that. So we made adjustments on our end, and we started seeing results, and we were able to track that from the data on these recorders. So just really paying attention to the data and being able to dig into it really helps out a lot when you're having issues with temps.
Yeah. That's perfectly said. If you're a shipper doing a high amount of delivered sales, again, it takes so much time, energy, money, effort to get that product onto your truck. A real-time device allows you to have a insurance in there to ensure that you're going to get this truck to that customer on time and in full. If there's temperature issues happening, you want to know while they're happening, not when it gets across the country or to a customer's dock, because that's going to affect the relationship and ultimately affect your bottom line. On the flip side, if you're an FOB shipper, there's also a need to care about visibility. While the customer might be requesting a device, a real-time device allows an inbound receiving team to get more proactive information to make decisions about things coming in hot, cold, spoiled, or late before it even gets there. So, at the end of the day, if you're an FOB shipper, you're still putting it on a truck, it's still your product, you still may want to know what's going on. And so there might be a level of peace of mind to having a real-time device in there. If you're bound receiver with that real-time device in there, knowing that this sort of truck is running hot or cold, like I said, it allows you to make those decisions before something happens, send it to a closer DC and attempt to save it, or maybe be able to buy something on the spot market ahead of time because you're not just going to have enough coming in and available to sell. We try to position it, and a lot of our customers that come on board do see this. It's not just a one-sided benefit. Again, the entire supply chain needs to be more connected to drive and yield the best result. And so if by using the best technology that's out there, that being a real-time device that's giving location and temperature insights, there's going to be fewer claims. There's going to be fewer rejections and fewer quality issues. And what that means is more sellable product for a shipper and less issues on the receiving end for a receiver. Everyone has these big ambitious goals around sustainability and less waste. This is an easy way to help with that, because if you're knowing about issues and preventing them, there's going to be less product in the landfill. Also, from the customer service and just relationship side of things, we know produce is all about people and relationships. Fewer claims, fewer rejections, and improved ability to communicate to a customer when their shipments are arriving is going to be less strain on the relationship, and also happier and more efficient processes inside for your processes. I think about one of my customers that ships potatoes out of the Midwest. They are shipping from Idaho to Boston every single day. And, we're talking East Coast time versus Mountain Standard, where those people at the wholesale receiving docks are saying, hey, where are my trucks at 3 a.m.? Because it's their time to get product unloaded and onto their shelves. By using something like this, they've allowed a seamless way for those sorts of customers to get information about the loads, taking them out of the equation. And so, in summary, it takes a lot of effort. This is a great way to allow for cheap insurance, and improving the relationship by reducing that waste and those claims, and allowing for better communication both externally and internally.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Raja, can you walk us through the basics of implementation?
Sure. Well, looking at it from two ways, there's the actual how do you use this and like how do you get started. I think in talking to all sorts of sizes and all sorts of commodities or shippers, I think there's a big misconception about that this is a massive endeavor. At the end of the day, if we refer back to something we were talking about earlier with a passive device, most likely already being in there, if they're not using something real time, it's really just a changing of a device, not a process, because your team is already used to placing some sort of device, accessing information one way or the other, whether it be in real time or post-mortem. And so, getting started, it's really about just making the decision that, hey, I'm experiencing claims, I'm experiencing rejections, I'm having inefficient ways to communicate both internally and externally, and I want to just be able to log on a screen and see all of my trucks and shipments in real time. Once you've made that decision, getting started is super easily. And so, as far as the actual operationalizing of real-time devices and other solutions similar to this, you place this tracker on the shipment. Typically, this is going on full truckload shipments, so one per shipment on the last pallet outward facing. That allows you to enable all of the sensors available in a solution like Tive, which would be light, shock, temperature, humidity, and and being on that last pallet is going to be the most optimal for accurate temperature readings, given the return air. And like I said, also allowing for the other sensors to play an effect as well. If it is multi-order or LTL, it's up to you how many you want to put in there. It's going to be up to how much visibility you want, maybe what the customer's requirements are. But as long as a device, one or many, is turned on and in that truck, you're going to be collecting information of that truck from A to B, unless someone takes that out and throws it right off of the truck. These devices do have a adhesive on the back of it for easy placement. So you can stick it on that last pallet or stick it on the wall, whatever is really easiest for your process. And the person usually placing this tracker is typically a shipping clerk or a warehouse worker. Whoever is loading that truck is typically putting it, like I said, with that last pallet that they're loading. Not often is the carrier doing it. Truthfully, most of the times the carriers don't even know that these devices are in there or that they're being tracked, unless you're someone like Braga who's gone the lengths to get your carriers involved in this, because you do see that benefit of them having this information. Everything is accessed on the web. So there's no on-site servers that need to be installed like older software. You just get logins for your companies. You can get your customers' logins. So getting started is as simple as saying, hey, let's get started. Let's get the devices out there. And once they're placed, you're logged on, being able to see information. The last couple things I'll note is that we do offer a 24/7 monitoring solution. So for some customers, because they are 24 hours operations and the products are super perishable, super high value, they do want an extra set of eyes on those shipments. And so Tive does have this sort of global scale in which we can have those extra eyes on your shipments at all times. So for example, we do have a blueberry shipper that's importing product from Peru, Mexico, in through Florida and all across the US. They're shipping it. We've got a protocol and an SOP that we developed with this team to where if X actions are happening, we're responding in a way that they've told us to. Call the dispatch. If none of them answer, call the highest degree possible, because we want to know and we want to save that shipment. And so the 24/7 monitoring service is an easy way to just ensure that the data is not only being collected, but also ensuring that there's action being taken on that data that we're collecting to prevent the issues from happening.
On our end here, we were kind of tag teaming with our carriers. So we are sharing this information, as Raj mentioned. So they do have access to their loads and are able to see these alerts and are actually getting the alerts themselves. So we collab with them to address these temperature alerts and ensure that they're getting addressed when they occur.
Yeah, and do either of you have any advice for getting started with real-time temperature tracking?
I would say start it off if kind of your first, you want to try it on one load and it's your first time. I would say pick kind of your longest haul, meaning, the one that's going to have the longest transit. You're that way you have, more days to look at it and, use all the different features. That way, using the GPS, you're able to see where they're at, you know, once they leave your facility to when they arrive to that final customer. They'll definitely make your job easier when you're trying to find a truck, versus calling or emailing the carrier. You're able to hop on the website and see where that truck is that morning or that evening when you need to provide any sort of updates. And really, if you're able to save, one load, that really, it's a win for that year and really just in general. So once I think you're able to save a load using one of these recorders, if it's on the hot end or cold side, really, I think you become a believer and you're hooked on these live trackers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would sum it up by just saying, farming and operating costs are higher than ever, and so it's definitely a tough conversation for people to think about increasing costs in any regard. But again, if you're adhering to FSMA and being compliant with most of your customers, expectations, you're probably already using some sort of device, and so the cost increase is marginal, and you can easily have something real time that can be paid back for pretty quickly just by getting, one or two loads saved in a year, and also improving that service as well as that internal efficiency in terms of how your team tracks today. It's really not a huge lift. It's not about implementing a whole new software. It's really about changing the way you manage your logistics and supply chain and customer service today by implementing real-time data. And so if you're facing those issues with claims or rejections, there's an easy way to help mitigate that. We're not saying we're going to make them zero, but the data has proven that we can help make those decreased and reduced, as well as, like I said, improving that service and making everyone's jobs easier internally.
Absolutely. And thank you both so much today. And just great information and very timely. So I'd like to shift to some questions from our audience today. So let's jump right into our Q&A here. And the first question we had is, can you provide any examples of companies that have used your technology to save a load? Who'd like to take that question on for us first?
Yeah, I think that's fitting for the Thai end over here. I mean, Sergio just pointed out that they've been able to use this to save loads going outbound to customers. A couple examples that come to mind, that berry shipper, they had a load running freezing in the middle of the night, and our monitoring service was able to get in touch with the appropriate people. At that point, it was the dispatcher who called the carrier to be able to take an action on that truck and prevent a $200,000 load from freezing up, which is a lot of money. It would have caused a headache on both ends of the supply chain. I mentioned that potato shipper. They actually did do a test with us, similar to how Sergio mentioned the sort of getting started, how to do that. During their test with us, they actually had a shipment of potatoes going to a very high-end quick service restaurant. And the load was running hot. And it was their second tracker with us out of 10. And the transportation manager emailed us saying, hey, well, what's going on? I'm getting alerts. Is this right? And we're like, yeah, this is right. And they called that driver and were able to save that load right there on the spot with their second tracker with Thai Ever. Another one would be, we work with a large meat shipper out of Australia who imports fresh beef and pork products into the U.S. They do a lot of air freight, and we're having crazy amount of claims beforehand by using passive devices. This is their quote, not ours, but we were able to reduce the claims and rejections by 99% in a matter of a few months by implementing something real time. They went from having no real time data at all and just stuff hitting the U.S. markets and saying, hey, this is rejected, this is out of temp, to seeing stuff beforehand, leaving their shipping facilities, going to the airport, and then landing in the airports here before it was hitting customers.
Yeah, those are great examples there, and just example of not just in a truck, but in the air. So that's just, thank you for sharing those. So I want to get to another question here, because I feel like this is always a great question. What is the ROI potential with real-time temperature tracking? Everybody wants to know that, right?
I kind of give a little, kind of Raj touched a little bit in that answering question number one. Really, when you save a load, what is that load worth? He mentioned the $200 load. So just imagine saving that, with in a year, really, your return on that tracker really is that much of whatever that load was worth. So I think really, like I said, once you save a load, so we start saving multiple loads, and really, your ROI is that much of how much ever those loads were worth.
Yeah, it's tough to put a dollar figure on time wasted with check calls and emails to carriers. I mean, Sergio can speak to what that might look like, but I mean, inefficient process, just being on the phone, not getting answers from carriers, sending dozens of emails saying, "Hey, where's the truck?" By having it just on a screen in front of you, it saves your team that time and energy spent doing the manual tracking.
Yeah, thank you both for jumping on that question there. Okay, another question here, which I was curious about, and that's how long does implementation of a Tide solution take?
Yeah, again, if you're using something already, it's typically just a change in device, and you understand the process, so that can get started very quick. I've had prospective customers reach out one day and they're started, a few days later. Supply is stable. We have a full account management team to be able to train your team and get you going very quickly. So, implementations can take as little as a few days. For larger scale shippers, the Bragas of the world, typically a test is a good way to just make sure that this is a good fit for you. And so typically we'll recommend getting some sort of number of test devices out to you, whether it be 5, 10, 25, 50, whatever is really going to make you comfortable, and use that test period, maybe a month, test it out, work through our processes, understand our system. And then after that, once you've validated that this solution does work for you and your team, a few days, we can have trackers out there, have your whole team uploaded to the platform, and you can get going very quickly.
Great. Sounds great. If within a few days, for some, that's pretty quick. So another question here, and that's what type of data can I collect with live trackers?
I'll jump in and kind of give some of the data that we're collecting here. We mainly look at is the temperature data. So whether it's during transit and once the trip finishes, is what did that temperature average? What was the temperature average on the trip, as well as the current location. Day to day, we're providing updates to our different customers, so being able to see that the truck is tracking and pacing for on-time delivery, that's crucial information for us as well. And if you see any sort of shifted pallets upon delivery, the shock feature that measures shock during transit to see, okay, was this something that happened during transit? Could this been maybe something upon receiving or loading? So those are the three major data points that we're currently looking at.
Excellent. All right, let's slip another question in here. You guys are doing great. Thank you so much for hanging with us in all these Q&As. So how long after implementation can I see real results? Raja, you checked on this just a little bit in our third question, but maybe just reiterate how quickly can we see those real results?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what your goal is in approaching a company like Tide. Like if you have a real-time solution today and something just isn't working, typically switching over to something like Tide, you can see the results pretty quickly. We don't just send trackers and say, "Hey, go have fun." We really are a customer-centric and customer-focused company, and so we do a lot of hand-holding through that implementation, ensuring that this product works for you before you get started, and even as you get going, and throughout the entire relationship with QBRs, regular check-ins, access to our account management team. And so, as far as a replacement and moving from one real-time to another, you should feel the Tide love right away. If you're coming from using a passive to a real-time device and you are having those issues before, as far as temperature claims, rejections, and inability to properly and efficiently track your trucks, I mean, it's going to be night and day within a week. You're going to have all this information accessible just by opening a website. And, all it takes is saving one shipment. All it takes is one of your customers responding to a link that you send them with real-time tracking saying, "Hey, this is cool. Like, I want this on all of my shipments." And that's a really easy way to feel that impact very quickly. So, it comes back to what your goals are. But typically the impact to a real-time or replacing with something like this, can be felt very quickly.
Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have today. I would like to thank our speakers, Sergio Torres and Raja Nagaraja, for a great discussion today. We appreciate you sharing your insights and expertise with us. I'd also like to thank our audience for joining us today. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.